Did you guys hear about the restaurant on the moon?
No.
They say it has no atmosphere. Yeah, it's a terrible joke.
Hello and welcome to the Strained Hammy Podcast, the king of all podcasts. Today is May 2nd. I'm Mark.
I'm Rex.
And I am Travis.
Today we're going to talk about our opinions on what the Cowboys did and didn't do in the draft, and we'll get a little Rangers talk in there too. Alright, so if there's anything we personally learned from last weekend's NFL draft, it's that it's kind of pointless to try and guess what the Cowboys will do on draft day. Let's go ahead and talk about the biggest point of contention, the trade down. Jerry traded the 18th pick for the 31st and a third round pick, which let several players we felt should be in the Cowboys' crosshairs get selected by other teams. The Cowboys ended up reaching just a little bit for Travis Frederick. What do you guys think about the trade down?
Oh, there's so many ways you can go with it.
Let's start just talking about the actual trade.
Actual trade, I don't think they got enough value for it, and I think that's a general consensus. The third round pick, although it was a very high third round pick, it was like the 10th or 11th or 12th pick in the third round, which isn't a terrible spot. Was still about 25 picks behind where they should have got. And San Francisco had a second round selection towards the end, which would have been more suiting.
Their second,
14 picks ahead of the one they actually gave them. And I thought that was the pick they should have got. Didn't work out. And so I think to move back 13 spots and not get that extra second, I think it's not... it's just not a good value. And I think most people will tell you that except Jerry Jones.
Yeah, he'll fight you about that.
Yeah.
He insists that, he invented the trade chart, so it's infallible. But
I guess Jimmy Johnson was never there.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, he did not invent the trade chart, and he is smart when he says we invented the trade
chart.
chart.
He's using the royal we there. Another thing that I think people are looking at when trying to make the valuation of the trade down is I think the Rams got a lot better value for their trade down. They traded down less spots. I'm not sure what the exact picks were. Traded down less spots, got I believe a second and a third back.
No, they got a third and a sixth.
A sixth, okay.
But it was a much later third. It was the 92nd, not the 74th.
And that was my whole point with the... At first, I think I emailed you guys about the Rams getting a better deal. But then, if you go back and look at it, their third-round pick was almost 20 picks later than the Cowboys' third-round pick. And that's a huge difference, especially in the third round.
Yeah, if you go and look through I looked through a couple of different draft pick trade value charts. And the one that I found that I think is most generally accepted, and I may be completely wrong too because I'm not a GM. So, but the one that I found that was most consistent showed that the Cowboys pick was worth 900 points, and the 31st pick that they got back was worth 600 points. So you needed to make up a value of 300. Now the Rams, I think even in their trade, got less value than what they should in other years based on this. So maybe too many teams were trying to trade back, and it kind of drove the price down. And so maybe what Jerry's saying is we got the best deal we can get.
Which I totally agree with that. And the
but he should have just said that instead of saying we won this trade based on all the trade charts. It should say based on the cost of doing business this year.
Trade charts are not accurate anymore with the rookie wage scale because you don't have high first round picks that our contract is worth more. So people are more willing to trade back, meaning it's a supply and demand law. The value of the trades are going down. So to that point, I don't say that they got fleeced, but I do think they could have got a little better value. And what does that mean? I think you go to San Francisco and say, we'll take that third, but you got to give us one of your other 10 late picks because they had a ton of picks.
Yeah, that's where...
Get another fifth, get a sixth, get a seventh.
That's where I'm at. I think they should have... the trade chart itself says they should have got a third and a fourth. That second pick, the second round pick that San Francisco had that a lot of people were calling for, I think was worth a little too much for them to get back in that deal. By the chart, they should have got a third and a fourth. Worst case scenario, a third and a fifth. Probably in this year's market, you're looking closer to the third and the sixth that the Rams got, and then you just got the better third round pick than they got for dropping more spots.
But I would have been fine with that. I mean, if they would have been able to say, look, we don't think that's a good value. Mm-hmm. Give us your second. San Francisco says, no, we're not giving you that second. Yeah. And you say, give me your sixth.
I think the difference...
I'll take that pick.
And I think the difference between the two trades is I think Dallas had been looking to trade down for quite a bit. And I think the Rams were more thinking, let's take a player. And then they took a call late from New England. And so they didn't have a trade parameter worked out. So maybe Dallas thought that the trade market's bad. This is the best pick we can get. And they took it. So they won that trade in their mind because we got a better deal than what we got offered elsewhere. Whereas New England made the trade, which I think is a better way to do draft day deals if you're the team trading down, is to say, okay, you're a little bit desperate, what do you got? And so I think that's the difference in the two scenarios. I think the Cowboys had worked out the basic parameters of the trade with San Francisco prior to the draft. So maybe they were working on a little bit skewed, nobody's desperate here parameters.
I guarantee, and I've heard that that's the case, that they had an idea that they were going to trade with San Francisco before the draft. So I've heard that, and my thinking is they probably said, if these players are available, we don't trade. Mm-hmm. If they're gone and these players are available, we consider trading. If none of those guys are there, then we definitely trade.
Yeah.
And it probably fell to the point where Sylvester Williams might have been the only guy that was on the board left that you say, maybe we trade.
Yeah.
Sharif Floyd apparently wasn't... I think talent-wise, he was valued high by the Cowboys, but not scheme-wise. And we talked about Rob Marinelli not saying as much as
not
Sharif
public,
Floyd doesn't fit. Or that he was the assistant coach that was in Jerry's ear saying this is not a good fit.
Yeah.
Let's talk a bit about the guy that they did get in the first round. One of the reasons they traded down is, obviously a lot of the offensive tackles, offensive linemen that they were looking at got off the board, and they felt that the 18th pick was a little too rich for Eric Reed. So they traded down, and people think that they might have got Travis Frederick, also maybe a little too rich for what they were thinking he was before. But what do you guys think of Travis Frederick as a player, just disregarding the pick value?
I like the player. I think he's talented. I think he starts day one. And I think if you think he's the guy, you don't wait 16 picks to the 47th pick to see if he's still there. Because that's a lot of picks. I think with the linemen going how they were in this draft, you couldn't risk that.
Yeah,
there were reaches.
Offensive linemen in the first round.
Justin Pugh or Jordan Pugh, great player. I
Kyle
think that
Long
was a reach.
Even worse than that. Yeah.
Kyle Long was a big reach, but because those things were happening, you couldn't wait. Mm-hmm. So at 31, I'm fine with it. I think he's a really good player, and if you get a starter in the first round, regardless of where that player was considered to be picked, that's a good pick. If he's a starter and he contributes, good pick.
Yeah, I would say I agree with you. I'm not sure he gets to 47. I mean, there's a chance, but there's always a chance. Yeah. There's a chance that you don't pick Sharif Floyd at the third pick, and then he gets all the way to where did he go? 23.
23.
And so there's always a chance, but I think they did the right thing, not risking it. I think they did the right thing, looking at what was available there and saying, okay, these are a series of guys that we like in the spot, and this guy's the biggest one. And because that's what they need. They need bodies on the offensive and defensive line. Offensive line, they tried to address. Defensive line, they didn't.
Yeah.
But I really like Frederick. I think he's definitely going to start at center for you this year. He's a smart player. I know some people have had some knocks on his speed, but nothing I've seen has really showed me that he can't get to the second level on middle linebackers. And the thing that I think people don't realize is in a 3-4, he's got a guy right over his head, and that guy's normally his responsibility. In a 4-3, he's got a guy right over his head that's a linebacker, so the second-level linebacker is 3 steps away from him. Centers don't have to be able to move a great deal. They have to be able to get positioning, they have to be able to move the line of scrimmage, and they have to be able to call out blitz packages and pass off guys in pass coverage and know when to help in pass coverage.
And Frederick can do all of those.
And Frederick can do all those things, and he's mean as all get out.
And he's got an awesome beard.
Yeah, he's got an awesome beard. The thing that I like best about him, and this is what I liked about him versus the other centers in the draft, when he blocks a guy on a running play, he turns his shoulders and creates holes instead of just patty caking and letting his running back find his way around him. And in Dallas, since Andre Gerard's been gone, we haven't had a center that can create any kind of running lane at all. 4th and 1 with this guy is going to be totally different this year when Tony Romo can just say, snap the ball, move the guy, I'll go right behind your butt and we'll get a yard.
Do you know what would have made even more of a difference on 4th and 1? Larry Warford at the 47th pick instead of Gavin Escobar.
Yeah, definitely.
Gavin Escobar is not going to line up on 4th and 1 and run block for you.
No, Gavin Escobar is not going to block on any.
He's a nice player.
Yeah.
Just a little confusing in that spot.
Yeah,
exactly.
Jonathan Hankins was still on the board. Defensive tackle, might have been a little bit more, fill him a little more of a pressing need, but
Yeah. Well, I still think at that point they needed another guard or tackle, and I think that there were guys at that position or at defensive tackle that they could have.
Yeah, Benny Logan,
that would have been
Kiffin Light was still on the board.
Benny Logan, which even though that might have been a little bit high, he would have been a starter in one technique. Hankins was there. You had Larry Warford, who would have started at guard. He's a beast. You had David Quisenberry, he would have been a right tackle. I think he went in the late 3rd, maybe early 4th. So it still would have been high, but those are guys that, in my opinion, were far bigger positions of need
than tight end,
that you could have taken and said, these guys will start and contribute at positions of need from day one, even if it's a reach to get them at 47, versus taking Gavin Escobar, who, again, nice player, but not sure he's going to really contribute. I mean, unless they have some crazy way of making this the Patriots offense.
They were talking about running a little more 12 personnel and even some 13 personnel because I think the reporters in the room asked the right questions and said, don't you guys have James Hanna? And that's the thing. You took a 2nd-round pick that not only is just not going to beat out Jason Witten, because Jason Witten's maybe a Hall of Famer.
Definitely a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, well, I mean, he doesn't have the team success, but he's definitely going to have the numbers to go up against anybody in the history of the NFL at tight end. But he's going to have to beat out James Hanna to get on the field in 12 personnel. Yeah. Because the same problems that Hanna has, he has. Hanna can't block anybody, and he can't block anybody. Now, he's got the size that Hanna doesn't have.
Well, but Hanna's not a small guy. He's 6'4", 240.
Yeah, but
and he runs a 4.4.
That's the difference. Is Hanna runs a 4.4, so if you're running
Escobar's hands are better than Hanna's.
Yeah, but if you're running a seam route, say you're on the 30 and you're running a seam with an end coming from the outside, do you want Escobar there or do you want Hanna there? Who's going to move the safety? Who, if they don't beat the safety, is going to take the distance? Escobar ran a 4.8.
I think they both can provide matchup problems for different reasons.
Yeah, and I think Escobar in the red zone is
6'6", 260. There's no safety that's going to be able to cover him. Even if they get there, he's big enough that he's going to make that catch. And he's got good vertical and good hands. Hanna, on the other hand, is going to outrun a guy.
Yeah.
And you're going to kind of need him to get more into an open space. So they both cause matchup problems, but for different reasons. So I think, again, nice pick. We'll see how it fits. Maybe it opens the offensive up. And also, moving on to the 3rd pick, Terrence Williams, who they traded that pick. Those two guys, Escobar and Williams, could open the offense up and then maybe it doesn't matter that they didn't pick a guard or a tackle.
See, I think Williams definitely makes a difference to the offense because in three receiver sets, I think he goes outside, and like you were talking about the other day, Austin comes inside, works in the slot, and that's a big, powerful receiver working in the slot, along with two guys that can take the top off of defense.
Well, they now have 3 receivers. Their top 3 receivers are 6'2" or taller, 210 or more, and I know Des Bryant isn't known as a speedster, but he's fast
enough.
and Miles and Williams are faster.
Yeah.
So,
and Williams is going to be great because even when Austin's out, and this was a big problem last year, when Austin was out, nobody could take the top off the defense that drew any kind of respect. Mm-hmm. And so, Dwayne Harris is fast, but he's got to catch the ball too.
Yeah.
And he's better working in the slot than he is on the outside. But with Williams now, you can't roll your coverage on a consistent basis to Bryant if Austin's not in the game, which, we've got to face facts at some point here. There's going to be a period of time this year that Austin's not in the game. And so I'm really happy about the Williams pick. I think that's a good pick. It's a pick that might solve some of your cap situations going down the road. My thing with Escobar is it better work. It better change this offense if you spent your second pick on it. Mm-hmm. He better be productive, and he better beat out James Hanna. And to be honest, it needs to fix a lot of the red zone problems in scoring that they've had.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk about the rest of the Cowboys draft.
So you're coming back, and you're supposed to lead us into each guy.
I was just about to start talking. All right, back on the Strained Hammy Podcast. We're going over the 2013 Cowboys Draft. In the third round, their second pick in the third round, the Cowboys went after what most people identified as a position of need, a safety, but they didn't quite fill it in a way that most of us were expecting. They got sort of a project safety. J.J. Wilcox from Georgia Southern. What do you guys think about?
I'm really glad they drafted a project safety because we don't have any of those on the team. Oh, wait.
That's two other ones.
Right, we have. Everything I've heard about J.J. Wilcox is that he's got incredible potential. He was a running back / receiver prior to last year, so he obviously has some good ball skills. To play offense, that's pretty much a requirement. And then they move him to defense, and he has a pretty solid year. He played for Georgia Southern, so it wasn't like he was tearing it up in, like a high passing league or even the SEC or anything like that. But still a very athletic safety, a lot of potential. I think he competes with Matt Johnson for the starting job, even though technically Matt Johnson is a faster, more storied ball-hawking safety. Johnson played 4 years as safety and had lots of interceptions all the time. So we'll see how it plays out, but at least he's going to compete.
Yeah, I think that they think that they found their safety in Will Allen. Meaning, if Matt Johnson doesn't do well and everything goes poorly, we've got Will Allen and we've got Barry Church back healthy. So I think what they wanted to do with Wilcox is bring in a guy that could be great. They didn't say, let's find the safest pick at this position in the draft. They said, well, let's find a guy that likes to hit people and that can cause turnovers and maybe can add an element on special teams. And Wilcox should be able to do that, and that's why he should be able to make the team, even if he doesn't win one of the starting safety jobs, or even if Will Allen is the number 3 safety, if Matt Johnson does his job and wins the starting job. Wilcox can definitely be a factor, punt and kick returns, and also in coverages. Yeah, but the guy was a running back and receiver for his first 3 years in college, which I may just be repeating you there. But he was a playmaker and had some big returns his senior year as well. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where they started to focus in this part of the draft is we need guys who can make a difference for us this year in this part of the draft. Who are the guys that can do this and how are they going to do it for us? And so that's why you saw with this pick and the next pick guys who can make a difference on special teams as well.
And Wilcox is certainly a quality player. I think
he's a quality athlete.
Most people had him rated higher, so from a value standpoint, that's good. The only problem I have with it is that safety is a big position of need, and he's just inexperienced, which may mean nothing. He may step right in and say, hey, I got this.
Yeah.
And I think he actually has the mentality. I think he's got up in his head what it takes to step in and say, I got this, and be that guy. I think he's got that. But it's just the uncertainty of it, being a one-year starter as a safety and not really having a ton of success there, even though he was very good. He didn't have 10 interceptions. I think he had 4.
Yeah.
Still, it's good, but it's not like stellar. In a lesser league, you would expect a guy to dominate, but 1 year of experience at safety may be kind of hard to make that transition.
So he may have been out of position early on in the year. And the other thing that I think it says about him specifically is I think it says that the Cowboys like him. Because in their situation, it makes perfect sense for him to sign a Will Allen because you've got Church and Johnson, and neither one of them ever played. So for you to take a safety, and the only safety you take in the draft, for that guy to be a project, and to take him as early as you did in the 3rd round, and invest a pick that a lot of times can become a starter on your team, you're saying, we really like this guy.
He's the highest drafted safety in the Cowboys roster right now.
Yeah, and so he'll definitely have a chance to compete to start. I don't know if he'll win that job this year, but I do think that Kiffin and Marinelli must really like his skill set in order to encourage them to, and the scouts as well.
And Will Allen does allow them to say, this guy could start this year, but just in case he doesn't, he needs 1 year of development, we've got Will Allen. Now, I really thought, and this is kind of a different subject, but Rondé Barber, he's a little bit older, but he was a cover corner who made a transition to free safety last year, and he had his most interceptions he's had since like 2005 last year. So that's a kind of guy, or Charles Woodson type, who transitioned from cover corner to safety, that I thought would have been a good fit to take a guy like Wilcox and transition 1 year. Barber's still out there, but I think Will Allen fits that role. I don't think he's as good at that spot as a Barber would be.
But he's also cheaper.
He's cheaper, and he's solid. I mean, he's a 9-year vet who has a solid career as a, plain safety, backup safety that you knew wasn't going to blow a game for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I like the pick. It may be a project, but he may also step right in and get the concept. I think he's eager to learn. He may contribute right away as a starting safety. The next pick, B.W. Webb in the 4th round, another William and Mary selection. I think somebody said that Jerry Jones has selected more William and Mary players than SEC players. I don't know if it's ever, but maybe in the last 2 drafts.
I think it's more William and Mary players than any large school individually. So more William and Mary than Alabama or LSU or
maybe
Texas. Yeah.
Either way.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But B.W. Webb is an intriguing athlete.
Mm-hmm.
I think at the beginning of the offseason, you probably would have sat back and said, even with Mike Jenkins leaving, that they're pretty solid at cornerback. Sterling Moore looked promising towards the end of the season. Skandrick has always been pretty straight line. He doesn't have a high ceiling, but he's not terrible. And then you got Carr and Claiborne. So I think you probably would have sat back and said, they're good at corner. But then they go out and get this guy who's a little bit undersized at corner, but he has the highest vertical leap. He's very fast. Not elite speed, but he's very, very good speed. And he's, by any measure of scouts, they pretty much say he's the most athletic corner in the draft. And they get this guy in the 4th round, and it's a guy that I think we've discussed could probably be your nickel or dime corner this year. And if that means next year he's moving Scandrick off the roster, that's a good pick.
Because Scandrick's got a bad contract.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is, to me, a value pick, a guy that they say, hey, this is a very athletic guy, and you can never have too many corners. I mean, it's a passing league now. We've all seen that transition. And here's a guy that fell because he's a little short and a little small for a corner.
The thing that I like about him most is that in his redshirt freshman year, he had 8 interceptions. And after that, he only had 2, but it wasn't because he lost the ability to intercept the football. It's because people stopped throwing at him because he was in a tiny little league. So you get 8 interceptions, people say, nah, we'll go to the other way.
Try the other guy.
The other guy's not that good. But I like that because this defense requires that you take the football away. That's the design of it. It'll give you some yards. It'll allow you to make some first downs. But
it'll allow Romo to throw the ball to Escobar and Williams.
Yeah. But it takes the football away from the other team's offense. And so Carr can make plays on the ball. Claiborne can make plays on the ball. But they don't have a big interception guy outside of those two and Sean Lee on the field. And they don't have a lot of high forced fumble guys. And this guy both caused some forced fumbles and intercepted the ball at a high rate in college. And that is what Orlando Scandrick doesn't do. He got the big money and he gets some pass breakups. He's a worthy corner as a nickel corner, but he's not going to take the football away. And if this guy can win this job, which is a if, but if he can win this job from Scandrick, that would definitely be a plus that he has that Scandrick doesn't. That could transform this defense to be a little bit more what Monte Kiffin wants.
Well, and there's 2 parts to that because this year I think it'll be very difficult for him to take the job from Scandrick.
Yeah.
But that puts him in competition with Sterling Moore in the 4th corner spot. Mm-hmm. I think if he beats Sterling Moore, and I think he can.
Mm-hmm. And Moore maybe used at safety some too. Yeah.
That would make Moore. And he's a big corner. He's 6 foot 210. So, I mean, he's got good size, which is good for a safety. He's got the skill set that would transition to a safety. So if B.W. Webb can earn that 4th corner spot, then you have Sterling Moore, who eats up a roster spot as a guy that can back up free safety and corner. Mm-hmm. And that's something that you can say, well, look, now we don't have to carry 6 corners or, 6 safeties or
5
whatever.
Safeties, yeah.
I mean, you got Sterling Moore who can play both positions. And I think he has played safety before, and so that's something that they've considered. Yeah. So if B.W. Webb can earn the 4th starting corner, that makes it even a better pick because it provides flexibility in the secondary for what the Cowboys can do.
And the other thing is Scandrick's another guy who gets banged up seemingly every season, so Webb should have some opportunities to step in and show whether or not he can play the position. And if he can, much like Terrence Williams before him, if he can do the job, the Cowboys can save a lot of money next season, which is the big season in Scandrick's contract.
Speaking of guys that get banged up a lot, DeMarco Murray, he gets banged up a lot. And I think the Cowboys made a play for some depth in the running back core with Joseph Randle, the running back from Oklahoma State. What do you guys think about him?
I think he's a good back, too. I mean, I think that was a constant theme that after the 2nd round that they just were crazy picking value players, mm-hmm. good players at good value. And I think even if it didn't address specific needs, this pick does. And Jason Garrett said before the draft he wanted to have a pure draft, staying true to their board. And that means taking good players at good value, whether it addresses the need or not. And I think from the 3rd round on, you definitely saw that. And that's when you need to take those kinds of players because later on in the draft, you don't have surefire starters. Mm-hmm. So you want to take the player of value and a good player at a good value. Well, Joseph Randle is a good player at a good value who happens to address a need, backup running back.
Absolutely.
DeMarco Murray, as you said, is banged up. He's a great running back, but He hasn't completed a whole season. I mean, he hadn't even completed 80% of the season. So
yeah, he's missed half the season both years he's been a Cowboy.
Well, I think one year he only missed 3 games, but significant time.
Yeah,
and those are significant games when he's your number 1 running back, and you don't have someone behind him that can step in and run as well as he does. Felix Jones stepped in and acted like
it's 3.5 yards a carry, maybe 3 yards a carry.
What's football? So the Joseph Randle pick is great. There are some other running backs that I would have liked to see taken earlier, but I can't argue with the Joseph Randle pick. I think that was a great value. I thought Joseph Randle was a 3rd round pick. I liked Le'Veon Bell, the big kid from Michigan State, better, but he was taken the pick right after Gavin Escobar, and I don't think they were going to look for anybody in the second round. So there was
him, Monty Ball. I like Monty Ball.
Monty Ball is another big back that I think they would have liked, and he went in the 3rd round, or maybe end of the 2nd.
Yeah, but you got a 3rd round talent and a 3rd round guy, mostly I think because he got hurt at the end of this season at Oklahoma State.
Like a little broken thumb, I think.
Yeah, but he missed. He did miss some time at Oklahoma State, and so he put up monster stats in the Big 12 because everybody does. But
DeMarco Murray didn't score as many touchdowns at Oklahoma as Joseph Randle did at Oklahoma State.
Yeah, and Joseph Randle's junior season, if you look at that's a big boy season of football.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's a guy that can really make a difference. And I think the best thing that he does, him and Travis Frederick, I think are going to add a dimension to this running game, which was 28th in the league or something like that last year.
Low.
Terrible. If Murray goes out, the difference this year is going to be you're going to have a guy who can blow open some holes, which your team last year couldn't with Ryan Cook starting at center, and a guy who, when a hole opens up, can make something happen with it, unlike Felix Jones.
0 drop-off between DeMarco Murray. Well,
there's going to be
minimal drop-off.
Much less drop-off than there was last season. So I think the Cowboys' running game and the overall balance of their offense, especially if they can do something with right tackle in free agency here, will really change and level out, and they'll have a chance to be more like they were in 2009 than they were last year in 2012 when their running game was non-existent.
Right. And last pick, they addressed their weakest linebacker spot.
The Sam linebacker.
The Sam linebacker with Devontae Holloman. And he is an interesting player. Out of South Carolina, 6'1", 248. He played more games at strong safety than he did at linebacker for the Gamecocks. And
he kind of played a hybrid linebacker safety position.
And he's interesting to me because another value pick. Mm-hmm. This is the best covered linebacker in the draft by far. Everyone will tell you that. He may not be a 3-down back right now, but if you have Justin Durant as your 1st and 2nd down run-stopping linebacker,
on 3rd down he can come
Holloman's your 3rd down covered linebacker, that's a good value pick too. He's going to contribute this year as a 6th round pick and potential to be a 3-down back as he develops.
And he's another guy that definitely on your coverage teams can make a difference for you.
Yeah, he'll be a special teams contributor after
and
that.
he checks all my boxes. Late in the draft, I don't like teams that get too cute, and sometimes it works out for teams. But late in the draft, I like Randall and I like Holloman because they check some boxes. Big school player.
Multi-year starter,
and produced. If you do those 3 things, like good schools, and especially and Randall and Holloman more than even most, because if you go to Oklahoma State and you're a productive defensive player, but you guys gave up 600 yards a game, it's not as good. Holloman comes off a talented defense, a defense that really dominated in the SEC and a defensive minded league. And so he was a productive player on a great defense. And Randall was a really productive player on an explosive offense. And so they check all the boxes, and it's not getting cute, and it's it's kind of saying, it lets you know when Jerry Jones leaves the draft room.
Yeah.
And scouts just to say, hey, these guys are good. Let's pick these guys.
There was one other interesting point, going back to your big school, big production. Joseph Randall was part of a trio with Brandon Whedon and Des Bryant that won the most, an award for the most productive piece of offense. Yeah. And I thought that was interesting that now both of them are on the Cowboys. So
Randall and Bryant. Yeah.
And then Holloman, to your point, complimented Jadeveon Clowney, which will probably be the number 1 pick in next year's draft, or number 2, depending on
if there's a big time quarterback. Yeah,
probably will be a tackle. Jake Matthews, right, left tackle for the Texas A&M Aggies.
I like tackles as much as the next guy, but give me Clowney.
Yeah, I'm giving it Clowney too. But anyways, so that's the Cowboys draft, and up next, Rangers. You guys podcast, I'll do weights.
Welcome back to the Strained Hammy Podcast. Mark here with Travis and Rex. Rangers are off to a pretty fast start. They recently lost their first back-to-back games of the season and lost their first series of the year. But right now they're 17-11, tied for the second best record in all of baseball, and they're leading MLB in team ERA. All that despite having 2 rookies in the starting rotation due to Colby Lewis and Matt Harrison's absence. Nick Tepesch and Justin Grimm especially have been fantastic. Grimm was April's American League Rookie of the Month, and Tepesch finished second in the voting. The thing that's impressed me the most about these 2 guys is they haven't been walking anybody, really. Grimm only has 4 walks on the season. He's got a 1.59 ERA, 2-0 on the season. Tepesch has 5 walks, but he struck out 18. He's 2-2 on the season so far. And I think the development of those guys really speaks a lot about the developing and scouting departments for the Rangers. Grimm was awful in the spring, but I think he listened to the coaches and made some adjustments. And on the Major League Baseball side, I would give a lot of credit to Mike Maddox and A.J. Pierzynski. Darvish said that A.J. has been like a parent to him, and I definitely don't doubt that A.J.'s been like that to those 2 young guys. So,
And John Daniels did an interview the other day that they asked him about Justin Grimm having a terrible spring, and why would you even call him back up? I mean, obviously injuries played a part of it, but he said, it just goes to show that the spring training isn't really about putting up awesome numbers. It's developing a certain aspect of their game, working on a certain pitch, working on location, working on whatever. And so to us, he had a terrible spring, but to the scouting program of the Rangers, they saw where he was at and what he needed to work on. And it was, hey, you're not going to crack the starting lineup right now, but we want you pitching every day, so go to the minors, develop this aspect of your game. Oh, Matt Harrison's hurt. You've had a few starts to develop it. Come on up, keep working on it, but be better. Yeah. And he's been pretty good since then. So I think he had a few more walks tonight, but he still had a strong outing, and he's been very consistent. Tepesch had a rough outing last night, but
yeah, he had his moments too where he fought through some stuff. Got a big, I think, double play with big strikeout, bases loaded, stuff like that. So
they're showing a lot of mature resiliency for young guys.
Yeah,
and I think that's something that when you see young guys do that even if they do have something, maybe their 4th pitch isn't very consistent or whatever, that's something they can work on. And if they have the mental aspect of not getting rattled, you got potential right there. And that's something those 2 guys have shown. It's something Darvish showed last year. They didn't get rattled easily, and I think they all feed off of each other too. You have Derek Holland, Darvish, and A.J. Pierzynski, these guys that are working in the battery around them, that they all feed off each other, that, hey, we can handle this. And We might have a bad outing every now and again, but we're not going to let it rattle us.
Yeah.
And I think that's huge for having 2 young guys in the starting lineup.
Definitely. And that resiliency has found its way in the bullpen, too. 2 young guys, Joseph Ortiz, the artist formerly known as Joe Ortiz. He's been a weapon that Ron Washington has used a lot, and I'm actually a little concerned that there might be a little bit of overuse going in there, kind of like Robbie Ross went through in 2012 when Washington practically run him in the ground. But through 11 games, he's got a 3.77 ERA, 12 Ks, 2 walks. And then you also got Tanner Shepard's looking like the eventual replacement for Joe Nathan. He's got a .66 ERA in 12 appearances, 8 Ks, 4 walks, which has been a little bit of a, not a great thing to see from a guy who's a setup guy. But those 2 guys I've been really impressed with, Joseph Ortiz and Tanner Shepard's. And even Jason Frazier, he had a shaky start to the season, but as he's been getting some chances to improve in low leverage situations, he's been getting better. So it'd be really nice to get him going and get the bullpen going.
I think going into the season, we all talked about the bullpen being the weakness. Everybody thought that bullpen was the weakness, and to see these guys. We weren't sure what Frazier was going to be coming back. I think he's coming off an injury and very few outings last year. Shepard was up and down last year, and he's young. And then Joe Ortiz, same thing. We didn't know what to expect from him. And seeing those guys and Robbie Ross continuing the success he had last year, it makes your bullpen. It changes your view of the bullpen if those things are happening. And Joe Nathan's Joe Nathan. He's been who he is, and if you can get those other guys to pitch well when you need them, it makes a difference. Because Frazier's, I think he's had 2 outings that were pretty rough. Yeah. One of them came in a game that didn't matter. It was a bad start from one of the pitchers, and he was basically there just to get some innings eaten up, and he had a rough outing too. But no harm done type deal. You're going to have a bad outing every once in a while, and if it doesn't really matter, if you're already down by 10, it doesn't really matter. So it's good to see that these guys are playing consistently and playing better than I think everybody thought they were going to play.
Yeah.
The best part about it to me is with the team pitching as well as it is right now, you kind of get into a rich get richer situation as guys start coming back. As you get Soria back eventually, which I think he's a little slower, but Colby Lewis, you're adding to your bullpen and to your starting lineup there. And so as some of these young guys maybe falter a little bit and start to struggle, if that happens, which does happen in the ballpark as it gets hotter. You've got established veterans coming in that may be able to pick up their slack and maybe really, with this hot start, you can put some really good space through the summer months between you and definitely the Angels and hopefully at some point the A's. Yeah,
there's some interesting decisions coming up on the horizon with Colby Lewis, I think due to come back in a month or so. If Grimm is still pitching the way he's pitching and Tepish is still going pretty well, where does Colby Lewis fit in? Do you maybe take Ogando out and put him back in the pen? I mean, there's options there. It'll just be interesting to see what they do.
I think it depends on how Colby Lewis comes back.
Yeah,
and it may be easier to start him as like a long reliever. Work him in slowly, and then if he regains his poise and his the way he was throwing before, then him and Ogando probably do switch. Because I think Ogando has a better fit in the bullpen right now if Colby Lewis can get back to Colby Lewis that we're used to.
I don't know that you can put Lewis in the bullpen just because of the nature of the injury he had. I don't want to pitch him any more than every 5th day. I don't want to. I know that the pitch counts will be lower in long relief, and maybe, maybe you don't have to use them. But if you got into a situation where you had to use them twice in 3 days for some reason, you wouldn't want to be there with a guy like that. I don't think coming off that injury.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. They'd probably have to try to work him in almost like he would throw bullpens. Like the starting pitchers, they they'll throw and then they'll have a day off, and I think they throw another bullpen that second day after pitching. So they probably try to work him in like that, but that's just a really weird thing to do when games start. So you might be right. They might just want to slot him back in the rotation.
Yeah, and if he's healthy and you are a playoff team, I think he's a guy that you want in your playoff rotation. Just because even if he's not as talented as say a Derek Holland, he's more solid.
Yeah.
And so even with the success of the young guys and all that's well and good, if it comes down to the playoffs, I want Darvish and Harrison and Lewis if I can get them all healthy and pitching well.
Yeah. The pitching is I think throwing better than we thought they would at this point. But at the same time, I had at the beginning of the season this image that pitching was going to have to carry the team because I didn't know if the bats were going to be quite as well. But some of the surprises that I think are helping carry the team are Berkman has been hitting really well. Brzezinski's been well. These are two new additions that helped with the loss of Michael Young and Hamilton. And
they're making JD look like a genius again.
Right. JD seems like he hits every time he gets the 1 year veteran. He seems like he hits.
Yeah, Vlad Guerrero. And,
oh my goodness!
Yeah.
So I mean, it's another pleasant surprise. I thought the pitching would have to carry the team. And it seems like early on they did, but the hitting's come around, and now you have guys with these, hitting over 300 and being consistent throughout. Nelson Cruz is having a good season, and I think we expected that. Yep. Beltre, home runs have been good, and his RBIs are good, but his batting average is a little low, but it's coming up.
Yeah. Kinsler's off to his usual hot April start.
Yeah.
330 average, 932 on base plus slugging. 5 home runs, 17 RBI, 17 runs scored. So he's been a real big catalyst for the offense.
He had a 403 on base percentage. I don't know if you said that, but he's that's something. He is not the typical leadoff hitter, but he has a 403 on base percentage. That's good for a leadoff hitter.
Yeah.
So not a typical leadoff hitter, but he gets on base.
Yeah, he's having his typical April. I would expect there be a little bit of regression there, but maybe not. Maybe he keeps it up and.
Yeah, you just hope it's less regression.
Yeah.
More like maybe he was 2 years ago and less like he was last year.
Yeah, and people get overly frustrated with Kinsler because his Ian Kinsler patented pop-ups are super frustrating to watch because they go like 20 feet and he slumps his shoulders and, moonwalks down. Yeah. But no, he's always been a big catalyst to the offense, and it's good to see him going at it. Mitch Moreland has picked it up a little bit of late too, which is nice to see considering how much of a slow start he had. He's starting to hit lefties a little bit more. He went 7 for 17 versus them at one point earlier this week. And then another signature JD move, Jeff Baker's been unsustainably hot. He's got 3 home runs and 25 at bats. He's not gonna keep that up. But the thing that's been bothering me about the offense really isn't happening at the plate. It's the aggressive base running that we've been loving to see early in the season has turned into just plain terrible base running. Yeah. They're just giving up
last night was pretty atrocious.
Yeah, they've just been giving up runs in situations where you don't need to be. Trying to get to third base with less than 2 outs, trying to score with less than 2 outs. It's just been, and just some weird circumstances like Mitch Moreland. I think tonight he got thrown out in just a terrible way at first base.
Yeah. But if you're going to be aggressive, you're going to have some of that too. You just have to be smart.
Yeah, and that's
and it's situational aggressiveness.
Yeah,
aggression. That was kind of an awkward
aggressiveness.
Soto last night he misjudged a fly ball, and that was kind of opposite of the aggressive tendencies we've seen.
Everybody else,
and it cost several runs. Yeah. About 4 games ago, Beltre got thrown out at home, tagging on a pop fly from third. It was a shallow. Yeah. It was a shallow pop fly though. He probably shouldn't have tagged, and it was a situational thing. I like the aggressive attempt, but situationally they needed the base runner more than the run. I think they were only down by 1 or 2 runs, so you couldn't sacrifice an out at home plate in that situation.
I think that's kind of part of what Ron Washington believes in, and I think we had a lot of the same complaints the first year they went to the World Series. We were saying, okay, you're giving away some runs here, and he said, Yeah, we are, but we're getting more.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's happening early in the season,
yeah.
and they are going to learn from this. Yes, they're MLB players, and they are what they are, but they will learn from this, and they'll start looking at situations a little bit more. I think the same thing happened in 2010, like you were saying, like a lot of early mistakes. It was fun to watch, but they eventually figured out when was the right time to go. When's the right time to kind of hold on?
Yeah, and I prefer over-aggressive to what they turned into last year, which really took their identity of their baseball team away, and I think was a big part of why they faded so badly in the second half of the season.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So.
Well, and I know you guys said Jeff Baker with his hot start, but I still think you got to try to... David Murphy's got to get better. He's struggling out the gate.
He's kind of the last guy.
Sub 200 batting average.
So a little overexposed.
Struggling, but I think if you have guys like Craig Gentry and Leonis Martin who are playing well and hitting well, maybe you roll with those guys instead of Jeff Baker more often, or instead of Dave Murphy. And I know those guys are center fielders, but from a defensive standpoint, if you had Martin and Gentry out there, that's a better defensive outfield with two guys that are average at the plate right now. Mm-hmm. And yeah, you might lose a little bit of power that Baker brings to the plate, but much better defensive outfield. Yes. and guys that you're not afraid of sending to the plate. Yeah. And they're not like extremely threatening, but you're not afraid to put them
Or
up
maybe
there.
you feel solid at center field and you use your giant trade chip to go get a corner outfielder.
Mm-hmm. With power.
And then you don't have to overexpose.
Giancarlo fan.
You don't have to overexpose Murphy quite as badly.
So they've got an interesting series coming up versus Boston this weekend. Boston, best team in baseball right now, kind of surprisingly to me, but I think they might be playing over their heads a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see.
They got some great pitching matchups too. Yeah. I think of the three projected starters right now, the combined losses is like 3.
That's awesome.
2 of the Red Sox starting pitchers have 0 losses and 1 has 1. And then we got Darvish, I think Tepish, and
maybe
Ogando.
I think Ogando. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, you're talking about 6 pitchers with not even 1 loss each, and it's going to be an interesting series. It's going to be a big one for the Rangers to win that series.
Hopefully Napoli doesn't kill us.
Yeah, it'll be nice to see him back at the ballpark. We can give a returning player a little bit nicer of a ovation
than we gave Hamilton.
So it'll be an interesting weekend, and I think that's all we've got for the Strained Hammy Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Go to strainedhammy.com and follow us on Twitter at Strained Hammy. Thanks for listening.
Chuck Norris is overrated, by the way. Chuck Norris struggles on the total gym.